Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
One thing that COVID has taught us is that many employees can do their job just as well anywhere as they can in the office. Now that restrictions have disappeared, can people still work from home? From SoundCartel, this is Business Essentials Daily. I'm Peter Letts, filling in for Nicole Goodman. If your staff want to work from home and you're okay with that, then how on a practical level can you make it work? Well, Jo Alilovic, Director of 3D HR Legal, answers just that in her book, Homeforce, Building a Connected, Engaged, Home-Based Team. What you need, she says, is a good plan, and she has one you can use. She outlines her 6-step work-from-home framework shortly. First, Chris Ashmore asks whether there's a huge shift of Australian workers heading back to the office.
I think, Chris, we are in a place of massive tension at the moment because we are seeing across Australia the ability to return to the office and then the hesitation of people not wanting to return to the office. So we've got, sometimes it's the employees wanting to go back and the employers not wanting them to. And in the majority of cases, it's the employers wanting people to come back and the employees not wanting to. Or maybe they want to, but not all the time.
Maybe an obvious question, Jo, but what are the benefits to employees working from home?
I think the two biggest ones are time on autonomy. So, we don't need to commute into the office anymore, which means we're saving our time in spending it on trains or sitting in traffic. And we're also saving our money because we're not having to pay for that transport or the parking. But, really the big thing that everyone values so much is their time because they can use it some other way. Like we hear just last night, I was talking to a large accounting practice and they were sharing how a lot of their staff want to use that morning time or evening time to exercise. And so rather than sitting down, they're actually getting their movement happening at the beginning and at the end of the day. And I think also there's this overall sense of autonomy. When people can work from home, they don't feel that they're bound by the restrictions in an office environment. They can sort of do their day the way that works best for them, whether it's, starting a bit later or a bit earlier, taking a longer lunch break, and not being so concerned about what their boss expects.
Well, they're the advantages for employees, but does that work for bosses as well? Are there advantages of having their employees work from home for them?
Absolutely. And I'm constantly trying to encourage those bosses who are still a little bit hesitant to remember that there are definitely advantages for businesses too. And the core one is that if you've got people who are happier, wherever they're working, then they're going to be more engaged and they're going to be more productive. So if you can create a workplace that suits them, then they're going to do better at their job. And what we are seeing absolutely is that where you are offering flexibility now, you have better prospects for recruiting people and for retaining people. So we're seeing big uplifts in job advertisements that have flexible work options and, that's what people are looking for.
Seems all too good to be true. Are there any downsides, Jo? Any challenges?
Yes, unfortunately. Just like anything, most good things have a flip side. In the book, I deal with 7 big challenges. And I think the biggest one is people's mindset around it. So just like we said, some employers just can't see that there's any benefits. So really it's about being okay and challenging yourself around your biases that you might have about how remote does and doesn't work. And then there's all the usual challenges that come up around, do I provide the tools and equipment? How do I communicate with people? How do I manage them when I can't see them? What about security? All of those things come into play as well.
If you want a business advisor that walks with you and not just talks with you, then Mazars is the right fit for your business. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
Well, in the book, you have a 6-step work-from-home framework you've developed. Can you walk us through each one?
Sure, I'd very happily do that. So it all starts with having a vision of where you want to go. So I say remember your vision and keep it front of mind at all times. What is it that you're trying to achieve by creating a remote or hybrid workplace? Is it that you want these happier employees? Is it that you want to increase productivity? Or maybe you are trying to push everybody remote so you don't have an office and you're saving on, base costs. It could be any one of a number of reasons. So you just need to know exactly what it is that you want to achieve. The second step after that is to establish all the roles in the business. So I always say to people, create your organisational chart, do job descriptions, even if you don't believe in them, start having them now and work out the remotability of all of the different roles. So, is it 100% remotable role, like me as a lawyer, I could do my job anywhere so long as I've got my computer? Or is it 100% not remote, like a pilot? We still want to have our planes with pilots in them. I do, definitely, anyway. Once we know that, then we can start looking at the generic details of how you want to implement this in your workplace. So I call this manage the details. And, what is it going to look like? Are you going to provide the computers? Are you going to provide desks? How are you going to ensure security and safety of your people when they're working remotely? So that kind of is where you're creating some kind of remote work policy. And then we move into the individuals, so organising the team, choosing the right people to work from home, having great contracts of employment with all of them, and making sure that, where you need to make adjustments for an individual, that you've done that, and you've done that in a way that everyone understands the expectations. Then we hit the fifth step in the process, which is probably the biggest one that I get asked questions about, and that's training and support. So this is definitely what most people find the most challenging, and it's everything from how do you onboard people remotely, how do you make sure that you're still developing relationships and communicating well, how are you managing performance. It's not as simple as just being able to say, here's your laptop, go and do what you do in the office at home. And I always like to say, train your managers. Unfortunately, a lot of managers never get management training in the first place, and when you then put your people at home, it's a different environment again that they need to adjust to. So, give them the training so that they can do their job well. And finally, like any good plan, you need to evaluate it at the end. So it's really going all the way back to the beginning, to that vision that you had, and saying, did it work out? Did I save money? Do I have happier employees? Is remote working for us?
Well, they're all good steps there, Jo. I want to go back to that fifth step, and indeed it is one that you admit you get a lot of questions about. And with new employees, how do you onboard them if they are working remotely? Is it a matter of just bringing them in, just biting the bullet, bringing them into the office and training them up, or can you do it remotely?
Either option works. And I think it really is a matter for every company to actually spend the time developing an onboarding plan. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of businesses don't. We get a new employee, they walk into the office on day one, we walk them around a little bit and say, hey, this is Jo, this is Chris. It's really great that you're here. Here's your desk and there's some work, and off you go. And it doesn't quite work as easily doing that when you're in a remote environment. So you have to plan it out a bit better. And I would say, even if it's in the office, you should plan it out a little bit better than that. Look, I've had people who have said, we definitely want to have people in the office for that first couple of weeks. We want them to feel what our culture is like before they go and work somewhere else. We want them to, to see our systems. And I think those people tend to be the ones that very much have a hybrid team. But there are businesses that are existing that are completely remote, huge businesses with 1,000+ employees, and they are fully remote and they do it all that way. So it can be done. And I think it really comes down to having a plan, having really good communication, and remembering that there's two things to an orientation. One is about orientating them to the work that they need to do and to the business that they're in. The second is about making sure that they have relationships and that they feel connected and engaged, because that's when people leave, when they don't feel connected to a business.
That was Jo Alilovic, Director of 3D HR Legal and author of Home Force. For a copy of the book, as well as free resources, including a work from home checklist, go to homeforcebook.com. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Peter Letts. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BDaily Podcast across social media and head to bdaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily Podcast.
SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.